Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 124th episode of the Triboro Podcast. This was not my second time doing the intro, but here we are. I'm your host, Nicholas O'Brien, as always, joined by my co-host, Justin Alonso. Justin, how's it going? What's going on?
Uh, Good. Can't remember if we talked before or after the NFL trade deadline, but what the fuck?
Yeah,
Feel like
I
the NFL
believe that
typically
was after.
has a bad trade deadline, and I feel like other people are calling this a bad one. No.
There's a lot going on,
Uh,
especially if you're in New York,
yeah, so especially
or at least one side.
and because to sidetrack a little bit, I feel so bad, but how I forget his name, but the lineman that died for the Jets,
hmm
how they were at his funeral. The Jets GM was at his funeral. Then 20 minutes later, he left and made the Sauce Gardner trade.
Yeah.
And a bunch of former Jets players were at the funeral saying like, "Yo, what the fuck?"
I think it was something like I think it was, yeah, the Sauce trade. He told the Colts, like, hey, I'm going to the
Yeah,
funeral. Let's
keep it
keep it
on the
under
wraps. Yeah,
wraps for like the next hour or whatever. So
yeah,
it's not like your phone's blowing up and all the current former
yeah.
Jets are there just, huh?
But crazy stuff going on in sports.
Yeah.
Moneyball
Justin,
Man
sidetrack.
is
I
in
need to turn on
football.
my fan because it's hot. Talk, talk.
Yeah, so Moneyball Man is now back in baseball after giving out the biggest guaranteed contract to a not so good person in NFL history. Then he dipped back to baseball. Now he's the what do they call him? Head of baseball ops?
I think
Head
he's
of
probably the president of baseball ops,
well,
probably, if I were to guess. Whatever.
GM slash head of baseball operations slash
He's yeah.
same fucking job.
He's
I
the man who will build the roster.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves. How like so many teams have a different thing, and so many
Yeah.
teams will be like, "Oh no, he's not our GM. He's our." Blah, blah. It's like it's the same fucking shit.
Well, it's all titles, so you don't
But that's
get
what I mean.
poached.
It's the same job. But
Yeah.
it's one of my biggest pet peeves. Anyways,
Anyways, we're back. If you missed last episode, go check it out. Justin did an excellent job covering the Yankees offseason, what he wants to see from them. But obviously, if that today we'll be going over the Mets offseason, what I want to see, what they should do, what few different plans of what they can do. But before we get to that, I do want to talk a little bit about the free agency class because I don't like it.
not gonna talk about Mets news.
I'll get to that.
Okay, I didn't know if you were gonna say that first or if you were gonna.
I'll get to that. But just very quickly on the free agent class itself, I'm not a fan. It's obviously Kyle Tucker and then everyone else. The Mets are not going to get Kyle Tucker. He's not really a fit. It like no matter how you slice it, unless you do something drastic like trade Brandon Nimmo, but then just to add another huge contract like Kyle Tucker, blah blah blah. Doesn't really make a ton of sense. So Kyle Tucker, not coming to the Mets. After that, everybody has, I mean, you can say this for like every year, but everybody has flaws. You can pick apart each and every one of these free agents. Even Kyle Tucker, you can pick him apart and look at him and be like, hey, he's not worth 400 mil, which seems to be a larger consensus than I thought. But I digress.
I have a feeling that we're really seeing the last couple of years how teams were getting so ahead of extending guys. It's really coming to roost now.
Yeah,
Where the
because
last like
now the
five,
top
six
guys,
years, you had like Acuna would have been a free agent by now. I know he would have been Julio would have been a couple years away, and maybe he gets involved in trade talks. Bobby
right?
Witt would be a couple years, like 2, 3 years away. Maybe he gets involved, and so many guys. You could go just down the list. There's so many guys that just got extended early, and Corbin Carroll's another one of those guys. Maybe they talk, maybe they don't. You know what I mean? Where it's just like
Right.
their name gets floated away because they're starting to get into arbitration, but.
Yeah, for sure. And now you have guys like Kyle Tucker, who is an excellent player, one of the better ones in the league, but he's flawed and he's not like a bona fide, he's not Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani that we've had the past 3 years. Those guys were at the top of their class.
Do you think that has
And
to
for
do
the
with it
most
at all?
part, in what way?
Just like the fatigue of like we had three like generational talents back to back to back. That now
Yeah.
it's like
I don't know about necessarily fatigue, but I think it's one of those things where it's like, all
fatigue
right,
may be the wrong word, but
like, hey, these guys were basically bust proof, if you want to call it that. Like, whatever they were gonna sign, they were gonna be well worth it, even if they decline at the end of it. Now, after 3 years of that, you come to this offseason with Kyle Tucker, and you look at him, it's like the middle of that contract might not be great. Like in the middle of Otani's contract will be fine. Judge's
Yeah.
contract will be fine. Soto's contract will be fine. But you look at Kyle Tucker, if he gets a 10-year deal, 5 years from now, what is 34-year-old Kyle Tucker going to look like?
Yeah.
Is that even going to be a guy that's going to play left field or right, a corner like
Yeah.
day in, day out?
And
So I
the
think it's
thing is
interesting.
too that makes it even more complicated. I forget if you brought it up or you probably brought it up, but how the CBA is expiring next year.
Right.
We have no idea how the hell that's gonna affect contracts.
Anything. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
for
feel like
sure.
guys last time they went for more like long term deals to kind of secure in like money, and this time it's gonna be so much worse. The CBA,
Yeah.
you thought last time was a bloodbath, just you wait.
Right.
But
So that being said, I think the last thing I'll say is a lot of the starters on this free agent class are also not fantastic either. I think more like the better starter will be found through a trade, I think.
okay,
But that's the last thing I had on the free agent class. To Justin's point, there is some Mets news to talk about. First and foremost, on the coaching staff side of things, it seems like it's still not official, but there was a report about a week ago saying Justin Willard will become the new pitching coach. Again, not official, but all signs point to yes. Currently, the Red Sox director of pitching development. He was a minor league coach with the Twins. He has a very big biomechanical background and a big focus on pitch movement. Music to my ears. Sounds a lot of fun. I welcome him with open arms. But, he's a big guy when it comes to the Red Sox. Yes, Garrett Crochet was really good on the White Sox, but he took another step with the Red Sox. Justin Willard has something to do with that. Brian Bayo took another step. Justin Willard has something to do with that. Lucas Giolito, besides his, injuries, he had a solid year. Justin Willard is a part of that. So it seems like that's hopefully, whenever this becomes official, got a really good coach, and I'm very excited to see what he does with the Mets, not only with the guys on the major league staff, but some of the younger guys. Like, what does he do with a Jonah Tong? As I'm very interested with. But moving on from pitching coach, we kind of got a more controversial uh, coaching leave, I guess. So Jeremy Hefner and Antoine Richardson are both going to the Braves to be on that staff. Jeremy Hefner, he was going to get a job quick. That doesn't bother me. The Mets kind of said, like, hey, we want to go in a different direction. So that's fine. Antoine Richardson, it bothers me to an extent because, yes, he was a really good first base coach. He was a huge part on why Juan Soto almost stole 40 bases. Huge reason why the Mets were one of the better base running teams in the league last year, despite being an older and slower team. It seems like there's just some disconnect between the Mets and Richardson. At the end of the day, it seemed like it came down to a pension/salary issue. Basically, the Mets offered Richardson one contract. He wanted to go and test out the market, which is his right. By the time he circled back, the Mets hired both Kai Correa and I forget his name already, but the hitting coach. So those are two new coaches that they brought in who they, I believe, or I would assume, gave pensions to. So by the time Richardson got back, the Mets could not afford to give Richardson a pension because Major League Baseball has a rule where you can only have four coaches with a pension at a time. So that sucks.
why?
I yeah, that's the other thing. Why? That's kind of stupid. If you want to give him a pension, give him a pension. That should be on the team. I don't think that should be a league-wide thing.
Yeah,
But regardless, it is a pretty big loss for the Mets. It is frustrating because it sounded like he wanted to come back. Yes, it looks bad because he went to the Braves, but at the end of the day, as good of a coach he was, it's a first base coach. I have a very hard time getting worked up over a first base coach. As valuable and as great as he was last year, if your team changes drastically or has a tough time the next year after losing their first base coach, there is something else fundamentally wrong with your team. If that's the make or break, there is something
Mendoza's
fundamentally wrong with
done.
your
If
team.
the Mets don't have a 500 record and people want to
Well,
say
yeah,
it's
that's another thing.
but that's what I'm saying. Like if it's you say like, oh, it's because of the first base coach. There are so many other. You think heads are gonna roll this off season? Oh,
Right.
just you wait.
God forbid. God forbid they have another bad year
Because
next year.
we talk so much about how out of all the major sports, the manager in baseball has the least impact on the game compared to like other
For sure.
coaches, stuff like that. So you take it down a step to like pitching coach and hitting coach, another step to probably like bullpen coach, third base coach, and then you're probably at first base coach. So that's like it's a fucking
Yeah.
first base coach. Like I get it.
Everyone take a step back, breathe.
Oh,
Yes, you're the
I
fan
actually just saw
favorite.
a report that Juan Soto completely forgot how to steal bases now because the first base coach left. That everything he taught them went in one ear out the other because he left.
Yeah, exactly. So it sucks, but move on. Lastly, before we get into the actual offseason preview, some option statuses. Alonso and Diaz both opted out of the contracts. Diaz was offered the qualifying offer, which is $22 million. He has, I believe, until November 18th to accept or decline. He will most likely decline. Alonso was not able to be offered the qualifying offer because he was offered it last year, so he is unrestricted free agent. Mets also picked up Brooks Raley's option, up like $4.5 million, no brainer. Frankie Montas and AJ Minter both opted into their contracts, both kind of no brainers as well. Montas will not pitch this year with Tommy John. AJ Minter should be back probably in May well, scratch that, probably maybe May. But he is dealing still with that season-ending lat injury that he had surgery on, so he's probably not going to be ready for opening day, but he will be ready at one point in the future. And then the Mets declined Drew Smith's option. He was rehabbing all of last year from Tommy John. The fact that they declined it leaves me to believe that either his rehab was not going well or that his stuff came back at not a good way, I guess is the best way to put it. Like his stuff probably wasn't as good as it was pre-injury. Besides that, I don't really understand why they would decline it since it was only like $2 million, not even. But that's all that. So that handles Mets free agents, who's staying, who's going. So that being said, Mets have a ton of free agents. You got Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz, Tyler Rogers, Griffin Canning, Ryan Helsley, Cedric Mullins, Gregory Soto, Starling Marte, Ryan Stanek, Jesse Winker, and now Drew Smith.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but did you mention his Silver Slugger yet?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was waiting for this entire time.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, he won. Pete and Soto won Silver Slugger.
Just because that's what I was meant earlier when I was like, oh, not gonna.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't think it's that important.
It's a congratulations. It's his first
Yes.
one. Soto, whatever.
Yes.
But Pete Alonso.
Yeah. Yes. Round of applause. Great bounce back year. Sign the man.
And I forget, he's Boris, right?
He is Boris.
You know Scott Boris is gonna make that
look, he won his first
deal,
Slugger.
the biggest deal on the planet.
Absolutely. But out of all the free agents I named, the only ones I want back are Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz. There's 3 others I would welcome back, and technically 2. Tyler Rogers, who I think was fine with the Mets. He was used in some not optimal situations, like with men on base. And then, believe it or not, I would welcome back Ryan Helsley if he wanted to come back in the first place, because I don't even know if he would want to come back. And then I would give Griffin Canning a kind of pity contract to rehab his torn Achilles and go on from there. But everyone else, I really don't have a interest in bringing back. Cedric Mullins, absolutely not. Gregory Soto, not really. We kind of have lefties. Starling Marte, thank you, Unc. You were great. Good luck wherever else you go. Ryan Stanek, absolutely not. Jesse Winker, I don't even know if he could play baseball anymore.
I feel like if
So,
Winker was healthy, you're like, hell yeah.
oh,
But now
probably,
it's
yeah, for
like,
sure. Now it's
can you walk?
hey, yeah, maybe you should just call it quits there, but I don't know his medical, so I don't want to jump to conclusions. But as we look, or as we move on from the free agents, and we look at the current roster, as is today, November 8th, the Mets' projected lineup is Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto, Mark Vientos at first base, Brett Beatty at third, Francisco Alvarez, Jeff McNeil, Ronnie Mauricio at DH, Tyrone Taylor in center, with Luis Torrens, Luis Angel Acuna, Jared Young, and Ji Hwan Bae, who they just picked up on the waivers, on the bench. The rotation looks like Nolan McLean, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga. Remember, Frankie Montas, Tommy John, Tyler McGill, also Tommy John. They will both be out for the whole year. Bullpen looks really bad. I'm going to be blunt. AJ Minter, Adbert Azole, Brooks Raley, Huascar Brazoban, Austin Warren, Jose Castillo, who they brought back on waivers, Richard Lovelady, and Brandon Waddell. Reed Garrett, Max Kranick, Daniel Nunez, and Danny Young will all miss the season with Tommy John or some sort of elbow surgery, however you slice it. That being said, Justin, what are your first thoughts looking at the roster as is right now?
I feel like you have top end, and then that's it.
It bottoms out
You know what
quick.
I mean? Like you got Soto, you got Lindor. Then who's the third best player on this team?
Nemo?
That's what I mean. Like I'm not even take out if you want to say position players or pitchers. Who is just the third best player for either?
It's probably Nolan McLean.
And
And he's a rookie.
that's not a bad thing on McLean, but he's also
No.
pitched what 40 innings,
Right.
if that.
Less than
Like
50. Yeah.
so,
They got a lot of work to do, especially in the bullpen. I am very concerned with the bullpen, which I will get into because there's one guy that you sign and it makes me feel a lot better, but the bullpen needs a lot of work. And I think one of the more underrated deficiencies of the Mets in the past handful of years, I would say, they haven't been able to develop a major league reliever. But it's probably Drew Smith
which
is
makes
the
no
last one.
sense because they can develop starters.
Yeah, for the
It's
most
the
part.
other way around for
It's
most
probably
teams.
Jerry's Familia and Drew Smith. I can't really think of anyone else on the top of my head. I mean, Reed Garrett, you can kind of make an argument for, but again, he was not drafted by the Mets. Uh, but he was, kind of molded by the Mets, if you want to call it that. But besides that, the Mets have not really developed a reliever in quite some time, and it's now showing. Not a single reliever in the projected bullpen I just named was drafted by the Mets.
I will say, if there's a position group you're gonna do it for, it is definitely relievers. But
For sure.
you need something.
Right.
You
How many
need
times can you
something.
give out 5 mil, 2 mil, 3 mil, a
Yeah.
mil? You're spending 10,
50
15
million,
million.
50 million total on your bullpen because you're giving out so
Right.
much.
Because you don't have anybody.
Yeah.
And, the waivers help. You grab guys for cheap, yes. But at the same time, like, you need somebody to take a next step with you to be that guy or to be a guy. Forget that guy. They have two guys in the minors right now, Dylan Ross and Ryan Lambert, who will probably break that streak. Dylan Ross was called up at the end of the season as kind of like a break glass in case of emergency, but he throws 100 with a disgusting splitter, but he walks the world. Very similar thing with Ryan Lambert. Throws 100, walks need to get better. So, with that being said, again, bullpen needs a ton of help. Additionally, the starters are kind of set for the most part. Ideally, you add an ace somebody that can go ahead of Nolan McLean. I would say probably an ace or like a high end SP2. I think it would be wise to add another middle rotation arm because pitching is so fragile and you just never know. But again, for the most part, Noel McLean, Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, Kodai Senga. That's not counting Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong, and Christian Scott's going to be back this year too. I don't know what capacity, but he will be back as well. So I think I would like to have a buffer before you have to turn to a Brandon Sproat, a Jonah Tong as like the next man up type of thing. I talked about the bullpen. Obviously, first base is a need. You can't go into the season with Mark Vientos having a starting job anywhere. You can't. Unfortunately, you can't. I still want to believe in Mark Vientos. The projections are actually pretty kind to him for the most part, but you cannot go into the season with him starting at first or even DH if he's even on the roster, because that's obviously in the cards. Center field, same thing. You cannot go into the season with Tyrone Taylor being your starting center fielder. Yes, Carson Benj is on the way up. He will probably be a factor in the 2026 Mets, but I have a hard time seeing him making it out of spring training for opening day. Then after that, I think the bench could probably use some work. Luis Torrens, fine. Cunha, okay. And then, ideally you push Tyrone Taylor to the bench, and who knows what happens with Mark Vientos. So right now, their payroll with projected arbitration and all things like that is $252,000. Their 2025 payroll was $341,000 or million, not thousand.
I
Imagine.
was gonna say.
252 million with arbitration estimated in it. 2025 341 million. So they had a drop off of about $88.5 million. Now their biggest needs are a top tier starter, a first baseman, center fielder, a DH, and then bullpen. So going from that, actually,
So
I lied. You
I
look
was
you
just
look
gonna
like you're
no,
gonna say
because
something.
you were talking about arbitration, and I was curious in my head, when are we gonna have clarity on arbitration? According to MLB.com, if arbitration eligible players and their teams have not agreed to a contract by a certain date in mid-January, they must put forth a salary for the upcoming season, and a hearing is scheduled for February.
That's far away.
Sorry, no, that I thought it was like winter meetings time,
So did I.
or
That
like
seems
before
far.
the new year. I thought it was like finalized.
Yeah.
That's crazy, but sorry. Go
No,
on.
you're good. Uh, before I go on to the plans, I do have some more thoughts about the roster as a whole. So let's take you back to the beginning of October, end of the season press conference, David Stearns. What's the one thing he said like 15 million times that entire press conference? Run prevention, run prevention, run prevention. Defense and pitching. Looking at the roster as is, with the guys under contract, I have a tough time seeing you improve the defense without like gutting or hurting the offense a ton. There's not a ton of room to improve without making big changes.
Cody
Like
Bellinger.
absolutely not. Like trading Brandon Nimmo. Because that's been the kind of popular, oh, they should just trade Nimmo. Look, would David Stearns love to get out of that contract? I'm sure. But Brandon Nimmo is still under contract for 5 years. And in those 5 years, he's still owed $100 million.
Trade him
With,
and Clint Frazier and Jose Buto for fucking Bryce Harper.
yes, with Nimmo has a complete, full, no trade clause. I really have a tough time seeing Brandon Nimmo going anywhere. So when I laid out these plans, I assumed Nimmo would be a part of the team. He would be a starting left fielder. Additionally, going back to defense, you have guys like Mark Vientos on this team who does not have an option. So unless you trade him, he will be on this roster. Not sure what his future is with this team. Same with Luis Angel Acuna, same with Ronnie Mauricio. Vientos, like I said, does not have an option. Acuna, according to Fangraphs, also does not have an option, but Ronnie Mauricio does. So again, those three guys, I'm not sure what you do with, because I do think Brett Baty deserves and earned the benefit of the doubt to be the starting third baseman as of right now. Could you sign somebody to play third or like assist and play third? Sure. I think if you want to platoon Baty, that's probably something they're thinking about. But for the most part, I think having Brett Baty as the starting third baseman as of right now is the best way to go about this. And yeah, so that's kind of like my overall thoughts. It's going to be tough to improve defense a ton without hurting the offense. But if you could find a way to do that, great. I think probably the best place you could do that, probably second base. If you want to trade a Jeff McNeil, who has basically 1 year, $15 million left, the difference, or I guess the drop off in offense, can probably be made up by a better defensive second baseman. Or if they like Luis Angel Acuna that much, I'm not sure what their thoughts are on him, because his bat speed from the end of 2024 and then his start of 2025 was down. And at 23, 24 years old, I don't expect that to drop off. So maybe working with a new hitting coach, you get some more bat speed and you have an actual somewhat league average hitter in Luis Angel Acuna. And then sure, you can have him play second. But as of right now, you could do a lot worse than Jeff McNeil in
And
my eyes.
one thing on McNeil too, like I know it's only 1 year, 15 million, but also, say you do trade him, is the team really gonna take on all 15 million? Again, I only know it's 15. I find it hard pressed that
Still,
a
no.
team's gonna take on more than 10, and that'd even be if you attach a good prospect with him. So, say you trade Jeff McNeil and you eat $10 million. With how
Right.
many holes the Mets have on their team, I don't think you could afford to do that. I feel like it just
I
makes
don't think so either.
Yeah, I'm just saying for you take the
Yeah.
thought experiment of it, it just makes so much more sense to hold on to him. Worst case scenario, he is what Jeff McNeil has done his entire career, and he's just a rover utility guy.
Right.
So
He's going to be an above average bat with average defense, even a tick above average at second base, and average defense in the corners, and he can stick it in center field if you need it.
yeah,
That's valuable. And if you want to look at the second base free agents, we'll talk about super quick. It's Bo Bichette if he wants to play second base.
and you want to talk defense,
right? Who is also going to get a pretty large contract, I would think. Gleyber Torres, you want to talk about defense. Jorge Polanco,
you want to talk
who
about
again,
defense.
you want to talk about defense. Luis Arias, you want to talk about defense. All right, you see the pattern, and then after that, Willie Castro, Luis Rengifo, Edmed Rosario, Miguel Rojas.
You want to talk about defense.
I mean, some of these guys can only play defense. But again, my main point is McNeil is my second baseman until he's not on this roster. I don't think you can upgrade second base. He was basically a top 10 second baseman from when he returned from the IL to the end of the season. Before September, when he had like the worst month of his career, he was basically a top 5 second baseman from when he returned to end of August, really. But regardless, I think he could do a lot worse than Jeff McNeil. So once again, Jeff McNeil, I assume, will be on this roster. So therefore, you'll not really see any second base movement. All right, with that out of the way, you can finally get into some of the plans. So plan A, or the ideal offseason, you got to start big and for some reason, this guy's on the trade market. And whether or not I think he should be on the trade market doesn't matter to the Mets. If he's on the trade market, you go get Tarek Skubal. Go ahead. You seem like you
No,
wanted to say
just
something.
I don't care who you're going. I'll drive you.
Anyone not named Nolan McLean and Carson Bench. Everyone else is on the
And
field.
even then, Nolan McLean, say that you could get an extension done with Scooble. Do you do it?
If you can guarantee an extension.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But he's Boris. I don't expect
So he's
an
not
extension.
signing an extension.
Right. So therefore, Nolan McLean off the table.
I feel like in baseball you don't see it as much as other sports of like the sign and or the trade and sign.
Trade and sign. I think the closest thing we got was to when the Mets traded Scherzer to the Rangers. It was kind of like a trade and opt in because I think he had
Yeah.
an opt out after it. So I think a part of the trade was you trade Scherzer, but he will opt into his contract.
Yeah.
So you have him for a year and a half rather than just half the year.
Yeah.
I think that's the closest we've gotten. But look, as bad as I think this would be for
Luis
baseball,
Castillo. Sorry to say it, but because they traded him to the Mariners and then he.
oh
But go
yeah,
on. Sorry.
he signed pretty soon after that. As much as I would hate this for baseball, I think the Tigers are doing a disservice if they trade Tarek Skubal. I think it's horrible. It's
What
a
was the
shame on the
report
front
that
office.
they were off? They were off like 100 million or something, or 200
Yeah,
million, something absurd.
after 2024. Yes, after 2024, where
The
he
year
won
he
the
won
Cy
Cy
Young,
Young,
they offered him a 4-year, $80 million contract.
had 1 year left of arbitration.
Yep.
For 2 years, but
For the best pitcher in baseball. Ridiculous. So it's a bad look on the front office. It's a bad look on the ownership, and I would absolutely hurt for the Detroit fans. But once
I will
again,
take advantage of that.
Yes, I will take advantage of that. If Tarek Skubal is actually on the trade market, if he does not get extended, or if the Tigers do not keep him, you trade for him. Again, I do not care what it takes besides Nolan McLean. And he only has 1 year. This is a rental for all intents and purposes. So what it's going to take is probably not going to be as much as you might think. Look at the Corbin Burns trade. It was Joey Ortiz and DL Hall. Joey Ortiz was the worst hitter in baseball this year. DL Hall was hurt and or in the bullpen.
And I feel
They're
like
not the same.
you
Tarek Skubal is miles better than what Corbin Burns was going into the year. But still, it's not going to take as much as I think people are seeing.
Because my thing too is that the Tigers are so pissed off those reports came out. They are
I'm
so
sure.
mad because that gives them so much less leverage in trade negotiations, where just teams can throw back at them like, yeah, you guys aren't. There's no shot you're gonna extend him unless you pay up that money. We know you don't want to pay up that money, so it makes way more sense for you to trade him. We're not gonna overpay for a guy that you're just gonna lose in free agency. If you want to get something now, get something now. If not, we'll let you dig your own grave.
Exactly. And I think honestly, a Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams might be able to get it done. Two top 10 prospects, two top 100 prospects, maybe like a lower end too. Like a lower end prospect as well on top of them. But I don't think it would take a lot. I would say I would like to keep Jonah Tong as much as humanly possible. I think Brandon Sproat is the more refined, safer pitcher. Tong has the most upside, but if it takes Tong, then again you gotta get Skubal.
It's sorry. It's so annoying that this is even a discussion. It shouldn't
Yeah,
be. The
it's a
Tigers
shame.
should be able to run that division for the next 5 years if they just
Yeah.
make a couple of moves. I'm sorry. It's fucking despicable. I hope the next CBA finds some way. I don't know how, but
Yeah, it's a real shame, but I'm fully ready to take advantage of that.
oh, 100%. You should. If they want to dig their own grave, give them a shovel.
Yeah. So staying in the starting rotation, you add Skubal, you have Nolan McLean, you have Sean Manaea. I would love to add a, kind of high 3, maybe 4 type starter. And some of the names I'm looking at, Zach Eflin, Tyler Malley, Lucas Giolito. guys who had up and down years. Eflin was hurt a lot. Giolito was hurt, but they still performed to a decent level when they were on the field. And again, I still have trust in the pitching development of this team. So I do think they can work stuff out. Like, I'm not looking for anything crazy. I'm looking for like a 4 ERA guy who will make like 25 starts.
That is Lucas Giolito in a nutshell.
Right. Like I really like Lucas Giolito. I
Yeah.
think you can work with him. He's very smart, and I think you put him in with the Mets and you can work out some of his pitch movement stuff and maybe like change up his usage. And I think you can get a 4 ERA
I think he has
over
sneaky upside too.
130. Absolutely. He does. I think if you sign him at like 3-4 starter level, you have 2 upside.
Yeah.
Like low end 2
Low
upside.
end 2.
And I think that's perfect for what this team needs.
Yeah.
Another guy I'm pretty interested in is, I forget his name. I forget his first name at least.
What time? What
Uh,
team?
Imai, one of the
Oh
pitchers
yes, I know
being
who you're talking
posted.
about. Yes, yes. I forgot his name though.
Where is he on this list?
You could do it.
I'll just talk about him while I look for his first name. But he's going to be posted. He's wacky. He's weird. He has like I think 20-degree arm angle, and he had Tetsue Imai. I hope I pronounced that
You
right.
found it by half a second in front of me, but yeah,
But
Tetsuya.
he
That's
very sidearmy, very like it. He's between sidearm and 3/4, like again 20 degrees. He throws like a Joe Ryan fastball. He doesn't get a lot of vert. It's a very flat approach angle. It's in the mid 90s, 95. But Joe Ryan's fastball is special. It's different. It's unique. Imai has that. He also has like the Trey Savage weird I think would be arm side slider, where on a pitch plot it doesn't move to the left and it stays in like the top right to right side of the quadrants. But
oh my
he
god, that
is
is weird.
so yeah, he's someone I'd be interested in. Some of the like it does seem like from a lot of projections he's gonna get like a 6-year deal in like the 20 million range. I would be a little adverse to giving him 6 years, but he's weird, he's wacky. I think again, he can be a very good 3 with upside to be even better. And again, very interested in him as well. But that's really all I had on the starting pitching. Moving on to the bullpen. The bullpen again, I was saying I have a big issue with, and I think they need to put in a
No
lot
interest
of
in
work.
Shota?
No,
No? Okay.
no. Uh, well, first of all, I think he probably takes a qualifying offer.
Okay.
Second of all, even in a park like Wrigley, wouldn't contain his home run problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my mind, Citi Field wouldn't either. And, he lost some velocity. Weirdly enough, the strikeouts were down. There's a lot of red flags. He's not a guy that I think you can get on a 1 year or even 2 year deal.
Mm-hmm.
Someone like Lucas Giolito, I think you can get a 1 year, 2 year deal for cheaper, I think.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I may disagree on Giolito just because I feel like we thought the same thing with Nick Pivetta, and they signed a 4-year deal. So more so in the
Right.
ballpark of sometimes these pitchers will just sign these long ass deals. And let me
Yeah,
go to
I think Nick Pivetta was also better.
Yeah. My only thing is Giolito had a 3.41 last year in 145 innings. A team is gonna give him
Yeah.
3-4 years.
Yeah,
You
look,
know
and
what I
if
mean?
that's the case, then sayonara.
Yeah.
Sorry. But I forgot I'll mention him here too. Like someone like Michael King, I would also be interested in. He's probably gonna get like a 3-year deal. And despite the injuries, I think a 3-year deal would minimize a lot of the risk for that.
Yeah.
And again, if he gets hurt, you do have guys to fill in because this is also under the assumption Senga isn't going anywhere, Clay Holmes is still a starter, and David Peterson isn't going anywhere.
The only thing with King
So
is his injuries are they're not
scary.
fluky, they're just weird.
Yeah, like a lot of nerve stuff,
Yeah, so
arm
it's like
stuff,
stuff that it
shoulder
just
stuff.
continuously happens. Like,
Yeah.
why? Why?
I also just would like the idea of Nolan McLean and Michael King in the same
Yeah,
rotation. I think that goes
that's
really
fun.
well. And
That's fun.
yeah, for someone like King, who's his command is like pretty good, and someone like Nolan McLean, who's obviously young and needs work on his command, I think
Yeah.
those two guys chatting with very similar kind of ways of pitching, I think would go a long
And
way.
that was not the story with King early in his career.
Right.
He did not have this like pinpoint command. It got better just the more he pitched. So definitely
Yeah.
a great guy for them to sit down and talk to. But
Yeah. But that's really all I had for the starting pitching in this plan A. Ideally it would be Scooble, McLean, Manaya, someone like Giolito, Peterson, Holmes, Senga. Obviously that's a lot of pitching, but Senga, again, you can't pencil in for 30 starts. You can't even pencil in for him being on this roster. And then
what's the way to use your bullpen less?
right,
Throw
I
more
think
innings. Like if you can't
yeah,
fully address bullpen, spam the shit out of starters if you need to. Put some of them in the bullpen for long relief,
right. Maybe you do put Holmes in a kind of long relief
like a two
type
three
of
inning
role.
guy.
Right. I'm not sure how that would go over after he's signed to be a starter, but again, that's a conversation to be had for another day. Speaking of the bullpen, I mentioned how I was very concerned about the bullpen, how it needs a lot of work, and there was one guy to sign that will fix many problems. You just bring back Edwin
Yeah.
Diaz. I think Edwin Diaz is probably more important to bring back than Pete Alonso, especially because of the state of this bullpen. And especially because you saw in the World Series, when you don't have an elite closer, you can be 2 outs away from a championship and it can be ruined by a home run.
Forget elite closer. I think you just need elite pitching up and down. Sign as
Yeah,
much elite pitching talent as possible. And
right.
the Mets last year, I feel like their biggest issue, or one of their biggest issues, especially when it came to the bullpen, is you had no one to get the ball to Edwin Diaz.
Yeah,
You have no one to get the ball to Edwin Diaz, but then you don't have Edwin Diaz. That's just gonna make you thought the bullpen was bad this year.
right.
So
And the other options are just not better than Diaz or not even close
yeah.
to Diaz. It's Ryan Helsley. We know how that went. Devin Williams. We know how that went over in the Bronx. And then Robert Suarez. Pete Fairbanks is somehow a free agent. I'd be interested in him, but he's not Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz is far and away the best reliever in this market. And again, I think you give him 4 years, 80 million, basically tack on 2 years to what he already had, call it a day.
If it
Hopefully.
was any team other than the Mets, I would say no. But the Mets just bring him back. The idea of paying
They have
relievers
to.
20
Oh
million a
yeah.
year for more
Scary.
than 3 like that. Again, any team other than the Mets where he was on originally, I would say no way in hell. But the Mets just have to. You just have
Yeah,
to.
they need him.
Yeah.
And I think you probably have like at least 2 elite years of Edwin Diaz left. And then maybe he's just a higher leverage reliever rather than the closer.
Yeah.
So you bring back Diaz, then you have Diaz, Rayleigh, and when Winter's healthy, Diaz, Rayleigh, Minter, 7, 8, 9. That's pretty good. I would like them to add someone in the middle there, someone who can pitch the eighth or the seventh rather than the two lefties of Rayleigh or Minter. So ideally a righty, someone like Tyler Rogers, I would bring back somebody like Hunter Harvey, who's coming from the Royals. He throws like 99 plus. And again, someone like Pete Fairbanks, he throws high 90s. He's really good as well. I think if you just sign Edwin Diaz and another high leverage arm, I feel a lot better about this bullpen because then you have someone like Dylan Ross who can come onto the scene. Oscar Brasban is a fine reliever. See what Albert Azalea has for you, and then someone in the back end like Brandon Waddell who can pitch in long relief. So moving on from that, catcher is basically set. Francisco Alvarez, Luis Torrens. Perfect. First base. Just bring back Pete. Bring it back. 4 years, $110 million range. I think that gets it done, hopefully. I have a tough time seeing him getting anything more than 4 years. If it's 5 years, I'd be okay with it if it was a lesser AAV. But when it comes to first base, very similar to Diaz. Not a lot of great backup options.
Did you make up that 4-year 110 million, or did you see it from the ESPN article?
I made it up. You can believe me. You can't.
There's an ESPN article that says 4 years 110 on the dot.
I made it up before I read any articles heading to the offseason. And that seems to be the popular guess.
Yeah.
Like it's like the 4-year 110 120 range.
Yeah. I see a
But
bleacher.
I can't prove it. You'll have to take my word. I made it up.
I see a Bleacher Report 6-year 150, which just seems on par for something Bleacher Report would say.
Yeah.
Trying to look at like other things, but yeah, that kind of I'd get a little bit nervous for 4 years, but a little bit, but
I think that's kind of like that gets you over the edge. Again, if it's 5 years, it's got to be at less money. It's got to be at like 25 or less a year.
Like a 5 on 25 or something, but at that point, why even
something like that?
Bother?
At that point, I'll give him 120.
Yeah.
But besides Pete, again, the options aren't great. Josh Naylor, perfectly fine first baseman. You're not signing Cody Bellinger to be a first baseman. And, Luis Rise, no thanks. Who am I missing? Who else was the other big first baseman? Is it just Pete and Naylor?
Goldie.
I thought there was someone else.
Goldie, but
I guess, yeah, but I guess like Murakami, I'm not signing. I want nothing to do with Murakami. I think Murakami will be a fun project for a team that's not quite ready to contend.
Ryan O'Hearn, Luis Arraez, Rhys Hoskins, Justice Turner, Donovan Solana, Dom Smith, Josh Bell, Ty France.
Not great.
I will say with Murakami. Okamoto.
I'd be interested in him, but I'll get to him in a minute.
I will say with Murakami though, I had no interest whatsoever. Then I kind of saw the contract predictions. I was like, okay.
Yeah. No. I'm looking at, forgive me, I think it's John Becker.
Okay.
Over on Twitter, he works at Fangraphs. He put together a huge Excel sheet of free agents and stuff. Probably link it. We'll link it in the description. He averaged and has like every media outlet's contract projections. This isn't on Fangraphs, it's his own thing, but he averaged every single media outlet that put out a contract projection, he put in one Excel sheet and averaged it out. So for someone like Murakami, he has for an average of 6 years, 144 million. It's about 24 million.
I saw something a lot cheaper than that. Never mind.
Yeah, if you just look at it,
I saw like five for like 80.
Yeah, excuse me, Kylie, I think it's Kylie McDaniel on ESPN did 5 for 80.
Yeah.
That, sure.
Yeah, if it's something like that, I am 100% interested for either team. But because then you also got to realize, don't forget the posting fee for any player that you get from overseas. It's very complicated. Roughly just add 20% of the contract. It's not going to be exact, but if you want just like a ballpark idea, add 20% of whatever the contract is.
Yeah. So when it comes to the Japanese players, I'm not sure what to make of the market because there isn't really a market just yet. But again, back to Pete. Point being, just bring him back. There's not a ton of great options at first base. I do think he needs to play some more DH, but from a fan perspective, from a team perspective, it's going to be very hard to replace him. To just bring him back. 4 years, 110 million. I think that's the range you have to be in. And honestly, I'm not sure who else would want Pete. I mean, the Red Sox are a pretty popular destination I've been seeing.
No, please.
But, are they ready to give up on Tristan Casas? Maybe. forget where else I've been seeing, like, Mariners, but we talked about Mariners last year. They're not going to pay for him. Like, if Pete wants a big payday, he's going to have to go to a desperate lower market team that's not ready to contend. Like, he's going to have to be Chris Bryant. Not necessarily with the Rockies, but I think that's because all these larger markets or all these teams that are going to contend next year all see what he is. And at this rate, it's a DH.
Because my thing
But
too is
yeah.
like, who forget the free agent market. What first baseman are you trading for?
There's one that I will get into in a different plan, so I'll save that for later. But there is one that is probably maybe available,
I think we're
but
thinking of the same name.
likely. But yeah, just bring back Pete. Uh, and with that being said, I do think the Mets should be proactive and sign a first baseman before Pete Alonso. I think they should sign somebody that can still help this roster in some capacity while also putting pressure on Pete as kind of like, hey, we're ready to move on type of thing. And so somebody like Ryan O'Hearn, who's a good defensive first baseman, I think would make sense. You sign him to kind of be like your first baseman early on to see how, how the Pete market reacts to that. And hopefully you can still bring it back because that, if anything, O'Hearn could be your DH. He could play first base on some days. He could like mix and match with Pete. Pete and him basically could go DH first base. Uh, you mentioned Akamoto earlier. I think you can do the same thing. A lot of the projections for Akamoto, 4 years, 56 million. If that's what it takes, I will absolutely sign Akamoto because on top of playing first base, he plays third. And from everything I've seen, he plays a decent third base. So you can sign Akamoto to be your first baseman, put pressure on Pete, and platoon him with Brett Beatty to an extent. And when Pete DHs, Akamoto plays first. You're facing a tough lefty. Beatty sits. You play Akamoto at third. Pete plays first. The only issue with that, it makes somebody like Mark Vientos even more obsolete if he wasn't already. So if you do sign an Akamoto, you have to get rid of Vientos in some capacity. If you sign someone like Ryan O'Hearn, I think Vientos still has a possible spot on this team.
I love Akamoto. I will leave it at that because I could talk.
Yeah.
I could talk about him for a while.
Yeah, he's a lot more polished than Murakami, therefore older, but a lot more bat to ball. The power is still good. The defense is supposedly good.
Versatile gonna cost more than half the price or less than half the price.
Right. If he makes $14 million a year, the Mets and honestly the Yankees should be all over that. A lot of
In
teams should be all
in
over
the
that.
Yankees projection or the Yankees free agency video, I think the contract I used was 348, and then about like 15 million and like signing bonus, whatever it was, and I was like, yes,
Right.
fuck yes,
Absolutely.
every single
Yeah.
day of the week.
The other thing you have to keep in mind as well is the Dodgers are kind of not
Same thing
in
with
the picture for
Murakami.
these.
Like, where do they? You can't
Yeah,
DH him. Are you just picked up a $10 million? If they didn't pick up the option on Muncy, I'd been like, sure.
right.
But now that you have Freddie at first, like, where are you?
Yeah, you don't have a spot at DH.
Grab
You
an
don't
outfield
have a
glove,
spot
like
at first base. The only place you got is third base. So unless you trade a Max Muncy, these Japanese players don't have a spot on the Dodgers.
Akamoto makes more sense because you could at least make the argument that they're both left-handed hitters, so you could make an argument for platoon with
Yeah.
Muncy and Freeman. But
Well, you're not
Murakami,
platooning Freddie Freeman,
no,
but
you
I
get the
get what you
point I'm
mean.
making. That maybe like,
Yeah.
oh, tough lefty wants a day off, or like want to get him a day off. Maybe you can make an argument for that every once in a while. Call like 5 games over
Right.
160. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
for sure.
them picking up the option on Murakami or on Muncy makes no sense for Murakami now.
Yeah. So that is better for any team not named the Dodgers.
Yes.
So again, bring back Pete, but I do think the Mets should be aggressive in grabbing someone who can play first base early on in free agency. So we move on from that. You got Jeff McNeil at second, Brett Beatty at third, Lindor at short, Nimmo in left. Center field, calling up the White Sox again. What's Luis Robert looking like? Because if it's not Robert, then that means it's Tyrone Taylor. And if it's not Tyrone Taylor, you don't really have a lot of great center field options. Cody Bellinger, sure, but he grades negatively, if not painfully average in center field. Also, I think he'd be a horrible fit for Citi Field. So I want nothing to do with Cody Bellinger. I want nothing to do with Trent Grisham, who also is a bad defender in center field, who will likely take the qualifying offer, I think.
I don't
But
know.
yeah, the only other guy I would be interested in, and he's in basically my backup plan for center field, would be a reunion of Harrison Bader. But my issue is he played so well for the Phillies, he might not take a 1-year deal. If Bader wants more than a 1-year deal, I want nothing to do with him. So after that, there's really not any other center field option except for Luis Robert.
And I just want anyone that wants Harrison Bader to realize he will be the most frustrating player on the planet. He'll be very valuable, but he will be the most frustrating person to watch. Just
we've both seen it.
Don't forget what you've seen from Harrison Bader. He will give you a lot of value, but don't forget how frustrating he can be.
Yeah. So Luis Robert, at the very least, will play elite defense in center field. He will still mash lefties with the potential of being a 4-5 WAR player, bearing injuries. So I'm picking up the phone for Luis Robert, seeing what the White Sox want. If you want Mark Vientos, I think I'm more willing to trade Mark Vientos for Luis Robert now. But after that, there's not really a lot of great options in center field. And I think Robert is the only guy who you don't have to sacrifice defense for while getting offensive upside. And then to round things off with DH, kind of going back to the first base argument, if you sign a Ryan O'Hearn, Kazuma Akamoto, he kind of flip-flop with Pete at first in DH at that rate. So for argument's sake, I'll say you sign Ryan O'Hearn because I think he'll probably take a 1-year, maybe a 2-year deal. So you have Pete Alonso for $410, Diaz for $480, a mid-rotation starter for $12 to $15 million, a reliever or two around the $10 million mark in total. Luis Robert, who will be $20 million, and then Ryan O'Hearn, who I think will take a $10-12 million deal. You add that to the payroll, it's $103 million to the payroll. It's about a $355 million payroll for 2026. So, about $10 million higher than 2025, but that's what it takes. So for your lineup, you got Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Ryan O'Hearn could fit in here, Francisco Alvarez, Brandon Nimmo, Luis Robert, Jeff McNeil, Brett Beatty. The biggest issue with this team is they're too left-handed. And I also think that's another reason for why they need Pete Alonso back. Josh Naylor, left-handed. Ryan O'Hearn, left-handed. Murakami, if you want to go that route, left-handed. Akamoto is the only other first baseman I would be interested in that's right-handed. So, again, it all comes back to Pete. Bring him back.
Did you mention the other guy you were a little bit interested in?
For first base?
Yeah.
I'll go to that now. So, moving on to plan B. This is no Pete. Calling up the St. Louis Cardinals for Wilson Contreras.
Not who I was going to say, but
He surprisingly graded out as a very good defensive first baseman. I will grab it now because I forgot. But he still hits well. He doesn't catch anymore. He's basically a full-time first baseman. He had 6 outs above average at first base. That's 91st percentile last year. Expected weighted on base above average, batting average above average, expected slug, batted ball stuff above average. He strikes out a decent amount, but he is like the only guy you can replace Pete with, and I'll kind of be like, okay. He is under contract, so you will have him for a few years. I believe he has 3 years left. Going to 2026, he has 2 years guaranteed of a club option for 2028, making $18 million each year. Very, very affordable. But Wilson Contreras is like the only other first baseman replacement I'd be comfortable with.
No Shinyandi Diaz.
Basically, he's a DH in my mind.
Okay.
He does not play first, and if he does, he's horrible.
Okay.
Like, again, if you're going to get a first baseman that's not an improvement on defense, just bring back Pete.
Yeah.
Because Pete can play in New York. You're going to get 35 plus home runs. You're going to get 100 RBI. You know what you're getting with Pete Alonso, and I'd rather have the known than the unknown with upside. So, again, Wilson Contreras is like the only other guy I'd be interested in that's not Pete or Okamoto, to be fair. In Plan B, I assume no Skubal trade. That being said, I think they can go other avenues. Call up Miami for Sandy Alcantara, Joe Ryan on the Minnesota Twins, Dylan Cease is like the only free agent pitcher I'd be slightly interested in, or top free agent pitcher I'd be slightly interested in. Call the Brewers about Freddie Peralta. Also be interested in that as well. I will also mention Cody Ponce, who is coming over from the Korean League. Cody Ponce played with the Pirates, I think, a few years ago, went overseas, reworked some things, the usual story. And he was really good, quite frankly. And he's probably not going to cost a lot. He could probably get him for around $10 million, around like a Eric Fetty type contract. So I'd be interested in him to kind of slot in the middle of in the middle of the rotation. The Excel sheet I was talking about the average 2 years, 22 million. So 11 million on an annual average.
By
Again,
the way,
I think something like that.
last in MLB in 2021 with Pittsburgh.
Right.
So,
So that's 5 years now overseas, right? 22, 23, 24, 25.
5. This will be 5th year since being in Major League
Right.
Baseball.
So he spent 4 seasons overseas and had success, changed some Arsenal stuff. So I'd be interested in him. Moving on to the bullpen, still bringing back Diaz. Got to bring back Diaz. What else? Oh, center field. Again, a Harrison Bader type player. Again, if he wants 2 years, I'm out. But again, I don't think you can go in to 2026 with Tyrone Taylor as your starting center fielder. And then for DH, I am interested in somebody like Jorge Polanco, who can fake it on the field. He can stand at second. He can stand at third base. He mashes left-handed pitching, which would work well for a Brett Beatty platoon. So I'd be interested in that. So in this case, for this Plan B, you got Lindor, Soto, Wilson Contreras, Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Alvarez, Jeff McNeil, Jorge Polanco, Brett Beatty, and Harrison Bader. For the rotation, you'll have Noel McLean, Sean Manaea, Freddie Peralta, Dylan Cease, Cody Ponce, Dave Peterson, Clay Holmes, Kodai Senga. Bullpen, you'll have Diaz, Rayleigh, Minter, and kind of work your magic waiver wire type ads for the bullpen. Last but not least, Plan C, which I do not want the Mets to touch with a 10-foot pole. Plan C is not fun. Plan C is, a Cody Ponce type. Who else is a lighter free agent starter?
Marcus
Let's
Stroman,
call it, no, a Dustin May, you know,
Walker Bueller.
Walker Bueller, someone that you kind of need to tinker with. The bullpen, Diaz leaves, you sign, Devin Williams, Raisel Iglesias, Ryan Helsley, because you need a closer. You don't sign a first baseman. Mark Vientos is your first baseman. But you could sign someone like Ryan O'Hearn to play first base. End of the day, this plan sucks, and I don't want this plan. You need a first baseman, you need a center fielder, and you have to add some form of top tier starter. Is kind of where I'm getting at.
I
And go ahead.
I have a sick feeling that unless Brandon Nimmo can find some way to start playing better, this is gonna be what every offseason feels like for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
You know
Because
what I mean?
again, I said at the beginning, it's very tough to improve on this team because a lot of these guys are set,
Yeah.
Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Nolan McLean, Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, Kota Senga. There's not a lot of spots to fill.
A lot of money invested in a lot of different guys.
Yes. Again, you have $252 million already invested.
Yeah.
It's before any free agents. It's before anything. That's a lot of money. So there's not a lot of room. But at the end of the day, I think this Mets team is its best with Pete Alonso. It's at its best with Edwin Diaz. So I'm not sure how things are going to play out. For center field, I would like them to leave room for Carson Bench to possibly make his major league debut and cement himself as the starting center fielder for the Mets, because God knows they need it. But I think the biggest thing for this team is bullpen and right-handed hitters, because again, this is a very left-handed heavy team, especially if Beatty and Jeff McNeil are your starting second and third baseman. And there's just not a lot of great right-handed options out there outside of Pete Alonso. But I do think a Kazuma Akamoto has a spot on this roster. I think that would work very well, honestly. DH Pete, you play Akamoto at first. You can play him at third. I think he works very well for this roster, but I think the biggest thing for me is I really, and I cannot stress this enough, I really want the Mets to be aggressive signing a first base type early on, because there's a very good chance the Pete Alonso negotiations go into January, February, like they did last year, especially if he's looking for more than 5 years, if he's looking for more than 4 years. So the Mets need to cover their backs and not have Mark Vientos be the starting first baseman, because unfortunately, he just he any shot of a replacement that you maybe could have argued for him to be went out the window after last year. And again, projections like him, Steamer over on Fangraphs, 248, 311, 456 slug, a 115 WRC plus with 28 home runs. That's fine. That's great.
I
But
know those type of projections love hard hit data and just how hard you
right,
hit the ball. So that's probably part of it. But
yeah. So again, it's going to be very tough to improve upon this team without improve defensively without hurting the offense. But one of the ways you do that is signing someone like Ryan O'Hearn early on, who's a good defensive first baseman, trading for Luis Robert, who is a very good defensive center fielder. And then after that, your hands are kind of tied. There's probably some bench moves they could make that I really just, as of right now, I couldn't sit here and tell you what. But at the end of the day, if Tarek Skubal is available, you go get him. You do everything in your power to bring back Edwin Diaz. He is more important to this team than Pete Alonso. You bring back Pete if it fits. Because again, if he wants 5-6 years, you have to walk away. And then, fix the bullpen. And that's kind of all you can do. Unless you do trade, Kodai Senga, David Peterson. But I don't see that happening with how fragile pitchers are. So that's really all I had. Justin, if you had any other thoughts about the Mets, the roster, maybe who they should look at, who shouldn't they look
you're
at?
gonna have to get creative on it,
Yeah,
especially
for
because
sure.
you have an entire bullpen to overturn. Realistically, you need to get 2 starting pitchers. You need a first baseman, and this is with a not so strong free agency class.
Yes,
Because I feel like it's one of those things of you try to fix one thing and you're hurting another.
right,
Where you try to trade for Wilson Contreras, oh, you got to give up some of your pitching prospects. Your pitching depth gets weaker. You try
right,
trading for Tariq Skubal, oh, you trade Nolan McLean, let's just say theoretically in that. Obviously, Skubal's better, and you do that every day if you get an extension, but now you just took away more depth from your rotation. More guys that
yeah,
were slotted into rotation spots. So now you got to figure out other guys. It really feels hard for the Mets to address multiple needs without creating other multiple needs. And
yeah,
I think that's kind of where it is.
yeah. I think that's a good way to put it because I don't want to be sitting here in June and be like, all right, this is great. The Mets can't hit.
Yeah, because they traded
They
all
need
their
to.
hitting for pitching, or
Right.
vice
Or
versa.
your defense,
Yeah,
whatever. Like now at the trade deadline, you need to go grab a bat because you can't score runs. They can't overcorrect. And again, there's only so much you can do to improve this team's defense. You gotta hope Lindor has a better year defensively. You gotta hope that Brett Beatty show his improvement continues. You gotta hope Brandon Nimmo plays a little better in left field. You gotta hope Juan Soto plays a little better in right field. There's a lot of hope, which is not great.
my only thing is I feel like with the Mets right now, their best bet may be to not make a single trade of note, sign as many guys, hope as many of them work out, save all those prospects, trade them at the deadline
Mm,
for to fix whatever issues there are.
something.
I feel
Yeah.
like that's the best bet, honestly, because then you'll have more clarity on who's having a good year, who's not having a good year, where everything stands, if you even should be trading 4 guys in the first place.
Right.
I feel like
Right.
that may be the best bet, but
Yeah. No, that's fair. But yeah, again, this was all going off of no rumors, no this guy's attached to this guy's interested. So once
no
those start rolling
ambiguous
in,
Heyman tweet.
right, no former NL scout says blah blah blah. So
Hail
once
executive.
those start rolling out, exactly. Once those start rolling out, we'll have a better picture on how both the Mets and Yankees want to operate during the offseason. But again, it's a weak class overall. It really is. It's
Kyle
super
Tucker or
top heavy.
bust. That's
Right.
honestly what this class feels like, and the Mets, unless they do some crazy shit, do not seem like they're going to be interested in Kyle Tucker.
No, no. And they shouldn't be. And that's just how it is. It bottoms out quick. So again, like you said, they're gonna have to get creative. And one more time, because I cannot stress this enough. The Mets need to be proactive in signing a first baseman before Pete Alonso. They have to. They have to. Like that's probably if you're taking one thing away from this video, the Mets need to sign a first baseman before Pete Alonso and bring back Edwin Diaz and trade for Tarek Skubal if he's available.
And
And
and and
and
and that's
and
the issue.
That's the issue. So I think they're in a decent spot, but they need to improve. And we'll see what David Stearns in the front office does. I think it's going to be an exciting offseason for the most part. Again, I'm super interested to see what he does because you have a decent amount of needs to address with very few roster spots. So that being said, Justin, last call for final thoughts. Thank you guys so much for listening and or watching. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Off season is starting to get underway. Once we got more rumors, once we get signings, we're going to be pumping these things out like seahorse babies.
Oh
Maybe not
God.
that quickly, but
Oh
for
God.
our sake. But leave us a comment. What do you think the Mets should do? What do you want to see them do? If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, follow us, leave us a rating, leave us a review, helps us out. Let us know you're enjoying the show. Follow all of our social media accounts at Triboro Podcast, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. Any signing, any trade, you'll get our first reactions there before we do videos on it. So remember to go follow us there so you can stay up to date. But thank you guys so much once again for listening and watching. We'll see you in the next episode.